good morning and welcome to another RIPT class brought to you by the Sports Science Institute in partnership with Total Sports. My name is Rode Yilla and you'll be joining me on this cold and rainy morning for a class which is based around functional movements. It is essentially resistance training where we'll be using common objects found around the household, so you will be able to do it from the comfort of your own home. For those of you who have joined us before, you should have a good enough idea of what you can expect in the next 45 minutes. And to the newcomers, welcome. For this class, all you need to do is basically have a fairly good understanding of how to move. I will be providing you cues with the movements. So if you are new to certain movements, don't worry, you will have time to learn them. And the more often you do it, the better you will get at those movements. Please make sure that if you do have any shoulder, lower back or knee niggles, you do follow the instructions given to you by your biokineticist or physiotherapist. There's no need to force through the movement, causing more harm than good. So if you do feel any pains during any of the exercises we'll be performing this morning, please rather stop and either revert to a rehab exercise that you know you should be doing or revert to an exercise that you did earlier in the session that is fine for your joints. So before we get started with our warm-up, I just want to quickly run through the list of the requirements for today. So today we'll need a heavy weighted object that can be in the form of a backpack that you can just load up with something that's relatively heavy to you, so something between 5 and 15 kgs. You could also use a water bottle, so one of those big 5 or 10 liter water bottles, or if you do have any other objects such as kettlebells or dumbbells, those will be fine as well. What we'll also need is a dowel stick, so any form of wood or plastic piping would be fine. You can use a broomstick if you'd like, and that will be something that we'll need as a fixed object, so it just needs to be long as well, so you can't use a little piece of wood that will only be shoulder width apart. We'll also need a water bottle and a sweat towel. And then if you would like, you can use a mat as well. So I've got a mat down at my feet. I'll be using that as some cushioning for the ground exercises. So getting started, we'll go into a little bit of skipping or jogging if you don't have skipping ropes. I'm not going to be using skipping ropes, but I'll still start with my skipping. So I'll be hopping on the spot. All we want to do is just wake the body up a little bit. Try and get your heart rate up, your breathing rate up. Warm up the muscles a little bit and get some activity into our joints. So as we go from skipping, you can either change your skipping pattern or you can switch up into a jog. So if you're jogging, it's just on the spot, a little bit of a lift of the knees, nothing too hectic at the start. From here, we'll start lifting our knees a little bit higher. And then back to normal, and then lifting up at the back. Good, you can stop there. Moving into our dynamic stretches, so we're just going to start swinging our limbs around, but the important part is control. So starting off at the top, we'll go into diagonal chest openers. The idea is to move your arms opposite diagonal patterns, pulling together at the back, so you actually do feel that your back muscles are working in the stretch as well. We'll do 5 per side. Good. Once you're done with that, we'll go into some leg swings. So for the leg swings, if you do need help with balance, you can always hold onto a fixed object. Otherwise, if you feel comfortable with stability, make sure that your hips are always pointing forward. We're swinging the leg up as high as we can, as well as back. So it's all the way forward, all the way back. You can use your arms to help with balance. And that will be 5 per side as well. Good. Moving into some Cossack squats. So we're just dropping our hips downwards as we step out to the side. So if I start from this side, I'm stepping out to the side. The toes lift up as we sit backwards, and then we're switching sides. We'll just bounce back and forward for 5 per side. Ideally, you're keeping your chest open by pulling your shoulders backwards. Good stuff. So we'll go into a couple of mobility flows as well as activation exercises. So for the first bit, what we'll do is an A-frame stretch. The idea is just to rotate around the trunk. So we'll start with our A-frame position. That will be feet shoulder width apart. Slightly wider if you are able to. The idea will be to keep tension on the hamstrings. So we're actually just pushing our hips backwards. You can have a slight bend in the knee. And in this position, I'm going to place my elbow on the inside of my knee and place the hand across. So now you can actually see the A shape. And from here, I'm rotating, watching my thumb so that you're actually opening up the chest. It's not just the hand moving behind you like that because you're not opening up the chest. So you need to follow, and then you'll actually feel a little bit of a stretch in the lower back area as well as the hamstrings. Once you finish your 5 per side, over to the other side. Good. So after the A-frame trunk rotation, we'll go into a judo push-up. So for this one, we've got 2 options. I'll show you the modified version first. So the modified version will be on the knees. The idea will be to keep our legs crossed at the back so we can keep everything still. Your hips are level with your shoulders as you move down towards the push-up. So what that means is this is my starting position, my hips are up, therefore it's level with the shoulders. As I move down towards the push-up position, I get to the bottom, the hips are level again, and then I lift the chest up. If you're doing the modified version, you must reverse, get to the top again. If you are able to, from here, you go into the normal version where you start hips up in the air, nose towards the ground, push your chest away from the ground, dropping the hips, and then reverse if possible. If you aren't able to reverse, you get down to the top position and then you just push back to get to the top. So we'll be performing 5 of those. I'll do the normal version. That's 2, 3, 4, and that's 5. Good stuff. So remember with the push-up position, always keeping the arms slightly tucked. Next up we'll have Supermans, it's also known as bird dogs. The idea for this will be to engage your pelvic stabilizers, also referred to as your core muscles. So basically the idea is to pull our belly button towards our spine. We're stabilizing around your pelvic area, and that is essentially to separate our upper body movements from our lower body movements. So in our quadrupled position, so that's hands and knees, hands are directly underneath the shoulders, knees are directly underneath the hips. We keep everything shoulder width apart, and from here we're moving with opposite limbs at the same time. So if it's my right hand, it will be my left foot. What we're doing is stabilizing around the pelvic region first, so there's a little bit of a squeeze through the glutes, making sure that when I'm bringing my belly button towards my spine, I'm preparing for a punch in the stomach, so everything is braced and it's supported around this area. And as I do that, I will start with opposite side. So once again, right hand, left foot, reaching out with my fingers as I push through the heel. There should be a nice straight line all the way through. You get back and change over. So after roughly 2-second hold, we can change over, and you don't want to let your hips drop or sway side to side as you're lifting one side. So 5 per side, and then we'll wrap up with the last exercise. So the last one will be more about the hip control, and we are essentially balancing while using our glutes and hamstrings. So standing on one leg at a time, we're going to hinge at the hip joint, which means I'm pushing my hips backwards. It's not dropping the hips down because that would cause the knees to bend. We are pushing the hips backwards, and you'll see that there will be a slight bend in the knee, but it's not caused by the knee. It's caused by the hips moving backwards. As I push my hips backwards, I'm aiming to push my heel as far back as possible while I'm reaching with my hands as far forward as possible. So it's a similar idea as what we did with your Supermans now, except it's both hands together and it's balancing on one leg at a time. So as I lean forward, my chest goes forward and downwards, and I'm balancing on one side. You push your hips back. From here, you push your hips forward to stand up again. So it's not standing up by using your back to stand up, you're pushing your hips forward. You should feel tension all along the back of your thigh. That will be 5 per side. So you should feel that your glutes are being squeezed to stand up. As you lean forward, there's tension in the hamstrings, so the back of the thigh feels tight. Good. So once you've finished 5 on each leg, you can have a quick drink of water if you need. We have finished our warm-up and we'll be ready to start with our primary lifts. So for those of you who are new to the class comprises of 3 sections. The primary lifts, which is essentially the tougher section by nature. It is more about the weight and control of the movement. After that, we'll go into your Metcon exercises, which is more about the high intensity work rate. So we are doing a relatively lighter weight or an easier exercise, but with more repetitions. Following that, we wrap the class up with what's called a finisher, and that is essentially trying to empty the tank in case you did manage to reserve some energy through the class. So if you didn't work hard enough in the Metcon, you need to make sure that you finish up nice and strong. And for the finisher, it is generally revolved around what we didn't focus on in your primary lifts or your Metcon. So starting with our primary lift, we have 3 exercises. We'll do 1 demonstration of each, and then from there, we'll just continue with the cycle. So your first exercise is the split jerk. So for the split jerk, I'll be using my backpack as my weighted object. And the idea for this is essentially to get your hips to dominate the movement. So your hips will drive the back upwards while you're also moving downwards with your body. It is a fairly complex movement to do if you are new to these type of movements. However, if you have joined the previous classes, you should be getting the gist of it right about now. So just to talk you through the movement, I'm going to have the weight in my hand, and ideally it's the opposite side going forward. So if the weight's in your right hand, your left foot is forward. If the weight is in my left hand, it's my right foot going forward. So remember, it's opposite sides that are working together. In this movement, you're not trying to jump forward, you're not trying to jump backwards. You should ideally land on the same spot or over the same spot as you were standing with 2 feet together. As the name suggests, there's a split, and that will come from your landing. So you will land with your feet spread apart, however, you're not jumping forward or backwards. What I don't want you to do is try and land in tandem. That means one foot directly behind the other, because that will cause issues with balance. So there's a slight gap in between that will allow you to keep your balance. So I'll show you from the angle so that you can actually see what's happening with the back foot as well, rather than just looking front on. So in this position, It's a dip of the hips, which will allow for momentum, so we like a spring being loaded. That pop up is from your hips, knees, and ankles. So you actually want to pop up as if you're jumping, and as you're popping up, I want you to violently punch the ceiling with the arm. The only thing is, as you're punching upwards, you need to remember to bring your body downwards. So from here, it's upwards as you're getting underneath, and then you stand, bring your feet together over the same spot you stood, and then back down. So once again, a little bit slower, dip the hips, punch upwards as you split your landing. So that little pop upwards should be a high enough movement to get you punching upwards with momentum and then landing with balance. So we'll do 5 per side. After that, we'll move into our next exercise. So everyone ready? Going for your first set. You also want to try to control the bag directly above your head, because your shoulder doesn't like movements out to the side. Good, so that's 5 per side. Next up, we'll be going into a single leg deadlift that will involve a row as well as a press. So we're starting off with a hip hinge movement, but it involves our upper body as well. So we'll need our weighted object again. Basically, we did a similar movement in the warm-up where we were hinging at our hips. Now we'll do the same thing, except if you need to, you can put your foot down for balance just to help with the movement, because there will be some weight in front. So arms are always down at the start. We're starting in our hip hinge position, so hips are pushed backwards. If you want, our foot is down touching the ground or up in the air. We are performing a row with a deadlift and the press. Ideally, you are able to control through one side and then you'll switch over to the other side. However, if you do need to regain balance, tap the toes down onto the ground just to make sure that you can coordinate the movement. You're not trying to stand up by using your back. You must use your hips to get the weight up. So in this position, squeeze the glutes, take the weight off of your lower back and stand by pushing your hips forward, and then you'll perform the press overhead. It will be 5 per side. So getting ready to start. Down at the bottom, back straight, perform the row, the deadlift, and then the press, and you just reverse the order. Good, that's 5 on that side. Always try to keep your back nice and straight. So even though I'm returning to my starting position, I'm always focusing on pulling my shoulders backwards, whether you are using your arms or not. Good, that's 5. Good, and the third movement for our primary lifts this morning will be a pendulum push-up, where you'll also have a leg raise. So you'll have one leg up in the air at all times, and with the pendulum push-up, you're moving from side to side. So if I start off centered over here, what I'll do is I'll put my feet in that position, and then it will be the outside leg, which in this position will be my left leg. If my left leg is up, I do a push-up, I cross over, switch feet, and push up. So you're crossing over and switching feet at the same time. If you need to, you can perform the modified version where your knees are down, however, you still have a leg raise. So in this position, got my leg up, push up, switching over, push up. Please make sure that if your leg is lifting up in the air, you don't keep your hips up in the air as well. Your hips do need to drop with your shoulders, but it doesn't mean that your hips sink. So it's 5 per side, 10 push-ups in total. One more per side. Good stuff. So that's our first round done. You can have a quick drink of water if you need, and then we'll repeat the same sequence, moving from our split jerks into the single leg deadlift with the row and press into our pendulum push-ups with the leg raise. Please make sure that you find the version suitable for you. So if you do need to perform a modified version so that you can get a hang of the movement, you'll do that until you feel comfortable and then progress. Right, so repeating from the start, we've got our split jerks. If you were comfortable with the movement, please continue. For those of you who still need a couple of extra cues, what I'll do is I'll break down the movement a little bit more. So from here, what we'll focus on is just the split stance. So basically from our split stance position or split squat, we will perform a lunge, so we move downwards as we press. That is just going to get us used to the coordination of getting our body down while we're pressing upwards. So from here, down together into the lunge, pressing, standing. And that's what we'll do for this set. So this will be a modified version, getting used to the movement. So you'll notice that as you're moving your hips downwards, you're actually not lifting the bag as high as if you were standing upwards. Good, so that's 5. Next up, we'll go into our single leg deadlift where we have a row and a press. What I'll do for this one is only focus on the hip hinge first. So for our second set, I'll focus on the hip hinge, and then the third set, I'll show the modification where we have our foot touching for balance. So the hip hinge, once again, hips moving backwards. If you are standing in front of a wall, such as this one, you can actually focus on aiming to touch with your heel all the way back. That will force your hips to move backwards as well. So like we did with our dynamic hamstring reaches, now it's just focusing on that part. You see that my chest is leaning downwards, causing my back to stay flat. I'm pulling my shoulders back to keep it straight. The hips must move forward to stand up so that you don't stop in this position, keep your hips there and try to stand up there. So you see that my hips have been left behind. So if I'm in that position, it would be the row, hip hinge, into the press. Reverse the order, so I'm always pushing my hips backwards and then get them forward. So there's a straight line from my ankle to my knee, hip, shoulder, and then ear. Good, so as you feel you're starting to get the hang of it, you can go into the loaded version. And if you still need help with balance, just remember, keep the toes down. I'm not actually helping by pushing off that back foot. It's only there for balance. Moving into our third exercise, the pendulum push-ups. So I'll go through the modified version where I'm on my knees. Once again, if you were able to do the normal version, please continue. You'll have a water break afterwards and then wrap up with your final set of each. So for those of you who needed more help with the modified version, I'm on my knee, leg is out, and it's a push-up. I'm exchanging to the other side while I straighten the other leg, and then changing over. Like I said in the warm-up, always make sure that your elbows are relatively close to your torso, so it is staying tucked. One more per side. Good. So you've got a water break and then the final set of each. So for the final set of each, I'll be going back to the normal version of the split jerk. So if you were able to progress from the split squat that we did now, moving our hips down as we pressed, let's see if you can start from feet together, getting into our split squat position as we are pressing. So from here, it's a quick dip and drive. So remember, if we use an example of a spring, as soon as you press it downwards, it wants to pop up. So we are quickly moving down and up together, standing, returning to our starting position. Good stuff. So moving into the second exercise will be the single leg deadlift with the row and press. So for those of you who wanted a guide of how to do it with your toes down, what you'll do is start in our hip hinge position. Toes are down, but all of my weight is still on the front leg. From here, I perform the row, your hip hinge, and then your press. So the back foot is only there for balance. Good, and then to finish up with our primary lifts, we're going to your pendulum push-ups. So I'll go back to the normal version. Just remember, we're not allowing for our hips to rock or drop. You're ideally controlling all the way through. Last one. Right, you've got a water break, and then we'll go through our Metcon exercises. So while you're still having the last sip of water, we will go through your Metcon exercises. There are 5 Metcon exercises, and the idea is to work through them as quickly as possible. We do not have a heavy loaded weight for this. You will need a weighted object for one of the exercises and then a dial stick for 2 of the exercises. The idea will be to get through each of the exercises, finishing up for 10 repetitions of each before you start with the next one. So you must finish your first set of exercises before moving into the second exercise. The first exercise is the hand release burpee, where you'll also perform a tuck jump. So the hand release burpee will involve the following steps. So I've got my mat in front of me. It will allow for a little bit of cushioning when I'm down on my chest. So what you'll do is place your hands down, kick your legs out from this position down to the ground, lift the hands up, back up, and then your tuck jump will be in place of the normal hop. Tuck jump, you need to bring your knees towards your chest. So from here, it's up into the next one. Please make sure that when you're landing, you land in a squat position. You don't want to land with your legs straight and land on the heels like that. You'll need to perform 10 of those. Once you finish with that, you'll go into your curl-ups. So the curl-ups will be with a weighted object if you are able to. And your weighted object will be up like that, always pointing towards the ceiling, so that when you sit up, it's above your head, and control back down, it's all to the ground. We'll move into your jumping planks next. So the jumping planks is essentially as if we were doing jumping jacks, except our hands move out to the sides and then our feet move out to the sides while maintaining a plank position. So what we'll do is from here, it's out to the side and then the feet. It's the hands and then the feet. After that will be the Iper rows, where we take the dial stick, hold it underhand grip so that your hands are like that. We are starting off in a deadlift position, so it's round about your mid shin. You'll see that your back needs to be nice and straight. Your glutes are being squeezed so that it takes the strain off your low back, and you'll squeeze the bar towards your chest, pulling the elbows as far back as possible. Pull the shoulders back as we stand up, and then it's the same movement back down. So you need to develop as much tension in the back as possible and then squeeze our hips to move forward. Wrapping up, we have overhead squats. So what you need to do is hold nice and wide on your dial stick. Keep the dial stick above your head at all times as we sit as deep as possible. If you aren't able to reach the extreme depth, getting down into your 90 degrees position is fine. So just make sure that you keep good form rather than forcing as low as possible. So if I start doing that or lifting the hips, anything like that, that is not what you want. So your heels need to stay flat and you don't allow for your knees to cave inwards or drop completely outwards, forcing you to fall forward. So one exercise at a time, 10 repetitions of each. So starting off, hand release burpees for 10 reps. Ready, and let's go. Remember, tuck jump. Last one. Right, next up is the curl-ups. Right, so that's 10 down. After that, we've got our jumping planks. That's halfway. Almost there. Moving into the upper rows. Always keep tension in the back. So I'm trying to pull my shoulder blades into opposite back pockets. If you want, you can think about squeezing a pencil between your shoulder blades. Good. So that's my 10, and then I wrap up with my 10 overhead squats. So for those of us who joined for the previous sessions, you will notice the instructions for your overhead squat will come into quite a bit of use now. So for the newcomers, please make sure that your knees follow the same line as your toes. We don't want our knees pointing in one direction and the toes pointing in another direction. Your knees do not always have to point forward. You'll see that my knees are pointing outwards, but my toes are following the same line. Good, so that's my 10. Please make sure that you finish up all 10 of each exercise. Then you'll have a water break before we go through our finisher. Right, so while you're finishing up with your water break, I'll demonstrate what our finisher will entail. For the finisher, we'll have 3 movements, which we'll just have 4 components because we'll do a right side and a left side. So to start off, we'll be in the high plank position. So the high plank position is in essentially the top of the push-up, where we have our hands directly underneath our shoulders. Our hips are level with our shoulders as well. So for this position, we are moving down into the plank and up again. So that will be called the commando plank. What you can do, if you need to, you start in the modified position. Once again, a straight line between the shoulder, hip and knee. So in that position, it will be down and up. If you are able to, you'll perform the normal position, noting that my hips do not rock as I change from high to low. You need to perform 5 commando planks. You can either lead all 5 with your right hand or your left hand, or you can alternate leading one with your right and then leading the next one with your left. From there, we'll move into a side plank position. So the side plank position, we've got our shoulder protected by keeping the elbow nice and close. We don't want to expose the shoulder joint like that, because all of that stress into the shoulder is not good for the shoulder joint. So keeping it relatively close to your torso. My shoulders, hips, knees and ankles are in one straight line. My hips are not behind like that. So in this position, I'm up into the side plank. I've got my hand moving through and opening. So it's the needle and thread. If you do need to, you can bend the bottom knee, keep the foot behind you, and then stay up like that. So it's the needle and thread for 5 repetitions. From here, I change over onto my back. The idea will be to move from the elbow joints upwards to a reverse bridge, so we keep our hips up. There's no contact with the ground while we march on the spot. If you need to, you can bend your knees a little bit more, or if you absolutely have to, straighten your arms, and it'll be easier to keep your weight up as well as less stress on the shoulder joint. Finishing up, we do the needle and thread on the other side. Same idea, straight line going up and the needle and thread. If you have to, the modified version with needle and thread. So it's 5 of each. We need to wrap up as quickly as possible. So this plank complex will be done at your own pace, but it must be done with control. Everyone ready? 3, 2, 1, and let's go. So it's 5 of each. You move from the one to the next. And it's 5 marches per side. Right, finishing up with the right side, needle and thread. Well done. For those of you still finishing up, please make sure you get through all 5 reps, and then we'll have a quick stretch to wrap it up. Good stuff, everyone. Right, so finishing up with a little bit of a stretch. We'll start off in a half kneeling position. So half kneeling, meaning that I've got one knee down, one leg is bent in front of me, and if my right knee is down, my right hand will reach upwards. The idea is to reach as high as you can. You'll feel that there will be a little bit of a stretch here. In this position, I'm also squeezing with the glutes to get the hips forward, but I'm not arching my back. So there's a nice straight line between my fingertips down to my knee, and I can actually feel that my hip flexors and quadriceps are also being stretched now. Keep squeezing the glutes, it will encourage the hips to move forward. From here, I'm pushing my hips backwards, straightening the front leg, and the same hand that was up will now reach across to the other side. From here, we'll just drop the hips backwards as we push our leg out to the side. So in that position, what we can also do, place the hand through the keyhole. Good, and then repeating on the other side. So starting off with half kneeling position, the hand is up, squeezing the glutes. And rocking the hips back, reaching across. Moving across to the other side. And remember to drop your hand through the keyhole. Good stuff. Right, so that's the end of it. Like I said, 45 minutes of fun. Hopefully it's gotten you warm in this cold morning. And for the newcomers, I hope that you guys enjoyed it and found that the exercises were relatively easy to follow. Please make sure you get your friends involved. We are live every Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And if you are interested in other classes offered by the Sports Science Institute, please make sure you check out the Total Sport stories on Instagram, as well as the Facebook posts about when the other classes are. We will see you same time next week. Have a great week. Cheers.